Alright, I'm back with another Outriders video. Not because I have been playing Outriders in any meaningful capacity. I've really not played since Destiny launched Season of the Splicer, but I'm talking about it because I think there is some news here, and I don't think I'm just blindly speculating at this point. I wrote an article about this today, and there have been kind of hints about this for maybe about a week now, where, oh, I hear someone. There she is. Barely see her. She's a blur. So first this started with Outriders is talking about this damage mitigation patch that they're working on. It was supposed to launch yesterday, and there were problems with it, so they're now launching it. As usual, I'm complaining about the lack of legendary drop rates and matchmaking and stuff, so the game still has plenty of problems. There was, however, a tweet where they, at the end of kind of talking about the patch and stuff, they made mention of like they were looking forward to expanding Outriders in the future, and that's caught me off guard a little bit. It seems kind of early to be teasing an expansion of Outriders, especially in our not live service game that we have here. So that does seem like they are going to be talking about future content at some point. This was followed up by some word from Square Enix about how Outriders is performing, and despite everyone complaining about Outriders right now and the endgame and stuff, the notoriously hard to please Square Enix is actually pretty happy with how Outriders launched and how things are going. Previously, Square Enix is the same studio that was like complaining that Tomb Raider didn't sell enough copies when it moved like 5 million plus back in the day. They said that Avengers underperformed when that launched, but they are not saying that about Outriders. They are pointing to 3.5 million unique players in the first month of Outriders. That it's not 3.5 million sales, because we have to remember that Outriders is free at Xbox Game Pass. So that's, you know, that adds to that total significantly to a certain extent, although obviously Square Enix was cut a check from Microsoft for that deal to happen. And they are pointing to highly engaged cooperative play, that the players play with friends a lot. And then one stat jumped out at me is that I think they said the average player time is 30 hours, which in the grand scheme of like a looter, that doesn't sound like a lot, but 30 hours in the first month, especially in this day and age when like game completion rates are very, very low. Like you're lucky if like 40% of players finish like a 6-hour Call of Duty campaign. Average playing time being 30 hours is very impressive. Obviously, that is dragged up by some of the more committed players. I, for instance, probably am pushing 120, 150 hours. I know other people have hundreds. They shared the all-time record holder is, I think, 750 hours so far, which that means you played like 16 hours a day since launch. So I don't know who the hell that is, but whatever. But the point is that is a genuinely impressive number, and it means either that a lot of people did finish the campaign. The campaign's probably about 20 hours or so, depending on how long it takes. You can rush through it in maybe 10 hours or so if you just kind of burn through it and put it at a low level, don't do all the side quests. Or it's people juggling kind of multiple characters across 30 hours. I've done all 4, and that's how I've kind of added up. I'm in the endgame with all of them. I'm max level, and so that's added up to a lot of time, and then post-launch expedition farming until recently, where I've mostly given up because of drop rates. But the point I'm making is that all of this kind of adds up to me that Square Enix is considering Outriders a success, and they have almost certainly given Outriders the green light to go ahead with additional content. I interviewed People Can Fly ahead of the release of Outriders and asked them about kind of expanding the game, like even if they're not going to be a live service with seasons and roadmaps and battle passes and stuff, that does not mean they can't make DLC, or what they told me is that they wanted to expand with self-contained expansions. So that is presumably what we might be hearing about from them. And we are also approaching E3. We know Square Enix is at E3, and while their biggest property is certainly Final Fantasy, and I would expect some additional content coming to 7 and maybe some more info about 16, I would expect also some sort of Outriders announcement about future content coming to that game, whether it's smaller DLC potentially or something like a larger expansion. It seems like the game has performed well enough initially, and it established that it can kind of create this, you know, a core base of players to play it in the longer term, that is warranted for additional content. I don't think this is like misleading. Like they said, they said they weren't gonna, the game was complete at launch. And like, I think that still stands. I don't think they lied about that. I just think they didn't want to start like getting ahead of themselves and assuming the game is going to be a hit and then being like, oh yeah, well, it sucks, but we promised you this DLC anyway. Like Godfall did that. Like Godfall has paid DLC coming and that game is terrible. I don't think almost anyone is looking forward to like paid Godfall DLC, but People Can Fly didn't commit to any DLC or expansions before launch, but now that the game is here and it sold pretty well and there's engaged players, now it's like, okay, we can talk about this, and if it follows the Diablo model, it might expand with a kind of significant expansion, maybe this fall. That might be a little soon, we'll see. I could probably do a whole other video about what I'm hoping for there. It would obviously be nice to see kind of the story continue to evolve, because I thought the story was surprisingly good, actually, by the end of the game. So I'd be curious to see what kind of new directions it could go in. Most importantly, I think we need a better endgame activity, or at least an alternative endgame activity than expeditions. That could be anything, like a Destiny-like raid, or some sort of horde mode, or something that is not timed runs of like max DPS co-op play for very low legendary drop rates. Because if there is one current problem with that, it is how expeditions work. And that matchmaking is terrible. The timers can be irritating if you're not going for like ultramax DPS over everything else. And the legendary drop rates are so abysmal that even the most dedicated players are giving up, because you have a 1 in 70 chance of getting that one helmet you want. And there's like one drop every other run, if that. And some things drop more than others, like the Cannonball set. So it's a recipe for frustration. I think there is... This all sounds kind of weird to talk about, because there's such a disconnect right now between like the mood of the player base, where it took People Can Fly a month to fix this like inventory wipe bug and restore people's gear, and then this damage mitigation issue has taken another few weeks, and they have not done really anything to balance the game in any meaningful capacity in terms of like buffing underused skills or weapons or classes, and nerfing some of the most annoying enemies. The Broodmother one-shotting was good to get nerfed, but that's kind of a bug, so I don't know if that counts. But like Strix and Crawlers and like, enemies spamming different abilities, like none of that has been addressed. So hopefully they can get through these technical problems and do a balance pass. Hopefully they understand that there is no reason to keep legendary drop rates this low, and I really need them to figure out a way to make matchmaking better, so 9 out of my 10 attempts to find a game aren't failures, which has been going on since launch, whether that's literal connection issues or people standing around AFK in camp. The whole system is very bad. But like all this said, like I think these are fixable issues. I think at its core, Outriders has a good base. I do not think this game is like in need of some massive like Gear 2.0 overhaul, because like builds are so crappy and gear is so crappy. I think it does all that stuff actually really well. That is like something it is actually kind of nailed for the most part. Like, yeah, they could buff different perks and gun types and stuff, but like I think they've done a really good job with kind of allowing for creativity and like the ease of switching through builds with mod alteration and things like that. I just think that there are some very obvious issues that they can hopefully address once they get through all these bugs. I do think that we will see something from Outriders at E3. Oh, and I didn't mention, there will probably be whatever expansion they're having. I would imagine that they're working on another class. That is obviously something that's a staple in a game like Diablo. Adding additional classes over time, and that was one of the things they mentioned, like, yeah, sure, we could do that in the future, like add more missions, add new classes. Like they offer that information, so it seems likely that that is something they kind of had in the back of their mind already. I don't know what that would be, given that we've kind of gone through most of the core elements with ice and fire and poison and rock, I guess. Bleed. I guess bleed's an element in Outriders, but you know what I mean. So I am expecting something here. I am a little concerned about the player base turning a corner from like how rough the endgame has been without significant changes into being excited for new content. But if they can get a handle on things, like I do not think we're in another like Anthem situation, Avengers situation. I think Outriders is fundamentally in a better place than those games, and it seems that Square Enix agrees. So we'll see what's next. This progress has been very slow since launch, but I would kind of keep your eye out on what would be coming in E3. And once this new bug fix change happens, I am hoping we are going to start seeing actual quality of life stuff and balance passes and things like that. So we'll see. As ever, I will continue to cover the game when there is something to cover. I just can't keep farming expeditions right now in the current pace, so I'm waiting for some changes there before I start going hard at that again. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.